This is the audiobook sample for the Gnome Exchange Program, North Pole Rescue Novel by Matt Caliri. This is my 39th audiobook, and it was released on April 26th, 2021. Funny story about this one. I finished it last year, and it's got my older microphone. I think I got my new one in February of this year or something, so you can spot the difference if you listen to it. But why did it take so long to come out? You might be wondering. Well, all I got out of the publisher was that the author was giving them difficulties, which could mean he simply wasn't responding to their messages, or maybe he didn't want to pay up. If that's how it works, and he'd have to pay me on his own. I'm not sure how it goes between authors and publishers when audiobooks are involved. Regardless of the reason, the publisher eventually pushed it on through, and got the book submitted by April, which I think makes this the longest sat-on audiobook I've ever had that actually got a release. There are a couple of audiobooks, that I might have mentioned in earlier videos, that I fully produced, but have never been released, because I've never been paid for them. One book was about a balloon fetishist, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. And another book was about the keto diet. That's just something you have to expect working as an independent contractor online. Sometimes people get cold feet. I hope you enjoy this audiobook sample. Prologue. Long ago, in the dark, early hours of the morning, two odd-looking figures crept down a knoll and into a sleeping village. Shrouded in mist, they moved undetected in the morning darkness. The larger figure was round and towering, with a big, brown beard. The smaller figure was shiny, slimy, and skeleton thin. The larger one laid his heavy sack down, while the smaller one slipped an apple barrel off his back. The two travelers plopped down on the soft night grass. Krampus turned to his half-brother, Nicholas, and said, "It's too early for this. I don't understand why we can't do this in the daytime, after lunch."
"Krampus, everybody would see us," said Nicholas. "It would ruin it."
"Ruin what?" asked Krampus.
"The mystery, the magic."
Nicholas's eyes twinkled as he looked over the small village below.
"People don't always want reasons for how things got there, or why it's there. They're just happy to have it."
"Joy makes me nauseous," said Krampus. "Let's get this over with." The two figures sauntered down the hill toward the first hut. Krampus pushed gently on the door. As the door opened, the moonlight shone on a mouse scurrying across the floorboards. The room was vacant.
"Anything?"
Nicholas asked. He towered over the door and had to bend his mammoth frame in order to peer over Krampus's shoulder. "Not a sound I hear, except for a mouse," said Krampus. He stepped inside and swiveled around to face Nicholas. He stuck his scrawny, ash-colored arm out and said, "Nicholas, you're not gonna fit through this doorway. Give me the bag of junk."
"You watch your tongue, Krampus,"
Nicholas boomed.
"My little friends worked hard to make these toys. But you're right,"
Nicholas continued.
"I'm gonna have to find another way to spread joy without anyone finding out about it."
Nicholas's gaze found the roof of the hut and lingered there. "That's how crazy people talk," said Krampus as he took the bag from Nicholas. Krampus then crept deeper into the room, leaving the door open. He walked up to a tiny spruce that stood against a small, frosty window. Kneeling down, he rifled through the big brown sack. "What did this one want?" he muttered to himself. "The horse? Drum set? Book of fairy tales?" Nicholas answered, but not to the question Krampus asked.
"The roof!"
Nicholas shouted.
"I should arrive on the roof! Go down the chimney or something!"
Krampus sat cross-legged, surrounded by mounds of toys. "Chimney? How are you going to get down a chimney if you can't get through a door?"
"I don't know. but it sure makes the whole thing a lot more interesting.
Compelled by inspiration, Nicholas walked outside to examine the roof. "Nicholas," Krampus said, not realizing Nicholas had walked off out of earshot. "Forget about the roof for 2 seconds, and tell me which one of these worthless pieces of trash is staying in this particular hut." "The penguin," said a tiny voice in the corner of the room. 6-year-old Nancy, dressed in red and green striped pajamas, stepped out of the far shadows of the room and into the moonlight that beamed through the window. "What are you doing walking around in the middle of the night, Nancy?" asked Krampus. "How do you know my name?" asked Nancy. Krampus finally stepped out of the pool of shadows that seemed to have cloaked him since entering the village. He was now completely visible to the girl as he crept toward her. Nancy's jaw dropped at the sight of his scaly skin, his elongated jaw, his red, veiny eyes, and the birch branches that sprouted out of his head, twisted and gnarled. Her eyes welled with tears as Krampus approached her. She was frozen with fear. When he was just a few feet from Nancy, Krampus rolled his tongue out of his snout. A link to purchase the Gnome Exchange Program is in the description. This title was a pay-for-hour production, so I do not make money from any purchases. Thanks for listening.